So first one up was the survey. I think we're probably safe to close it. I think we got, I don't know, maybe like 20 more responses in the last week than you had the week before, but the data looks roughly the same. Like none of the averages dramatically shifted. So I think we should close it and then document however we're going to end up documenting that and move on from there. I did have another thought that I wonder if we should run it externally. And Pedro, your question, what would be the goal? I have a concern. If you look at like the stack ranking, knowing who should review my merge request is like in the middle of the pack for GitLab. Was like not important. I think that's because we've broken the model. Yeah, it's even lower than that, right? It's near the bottom. And I think that's because we don't suffer that pain internally at all, because we have danger. And so I wonder if we have danger with our own homegrown reviewer roulette. And so I'm wondering if, and maybe it doesn't matter. Like, I think we know there's a problem there and we're going to go solve it. So maybe we just continue down that path. But if we thought that maybe we wouldn't continue working on like surfacing who should review an MR, then it might be interesting to get external data. So I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Yeah, just quickly some context for Amy. This is a survey that we ran internally, aimed primarily at engineers. And we're looking now at the results. And one of the questions that we had, which was the main question, was for them to stack rank these actions or intentions in terms of like problems, like how much of a problem this currently is, or how much of a pain point this is in GitLab.
I actually took the survey, so yeah, this is familiar.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you for that, by the way. Yeah, I think I think it's also always good to balance these two things, the internal and external. You convinced me when you joined Code Review that we should align the philosophies of our internal code review practices with what we wanted to, or what was most important for us in the code review group to build in GitLab. And I'm sold on that, especially because, not only because of dogfooding, but also if we can make our internal code review practices better, it won't be just better for us in the code review group, it will be for all of GitLab. And that will have compounding effects to help us ship faster and more effectively, and better communication and so on and so on. So I think having that as the primary goal is amazing. But I think it's also good that we don't remain in a bubble and we reach out and understand what others are thinking about. Yeah, I think it would be interesting. I don't know if this exactly the same survey makes sense or not. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Yeah, I have another comment, but I'll stop there for Catherine or Amy to give their feedback.
Yeah, that was going to be my thought as well. I definitely think there's no harm in doing it externally. It actually would be great to get more perspective on it, but I was going to say a similar thing about whether the ranking would be positioned the same, ranking of problems, or if you want it to be more specific to features, or if you had to prioritize something that we're going to build next, or I don't know, whatever the goal might be. That might be something to consider, but otherwise, I think it would be great to get external feedback.
No opinions from me at this time. Too new.
It's okay. Yeah, one of what I was going to say is that do you think, like, this is an input, do you think that this is, the results are not good enough for us to do anything about them?
No, I think if you look at like the number one, it was like knowing what's changed, right? Since I have it up too, but I already don't have it up. I think that's
Yeah.
number one.
Yeah.
And I think in my first week, when you and I talked, you were like, this is the one that like is the biggest problem.
Yeah. And that
Right,
was
like
out of
knowing,
assumption from my
yeah,
own usage and what I saw others. That was just assumption.
yeah. And so like, I think we validated, right, that, you know, we've talked a lot about like, how do we deal with communicating status of EMR and what's changed and like what needs to happen. And we've got a bunch of different ways that I think we're tackling that. We're tackling that with like reviewers and handoff. We introduced viewed file checkbox thingy. It's like not a good name, but and so I think we're like tackling that problem. And I think we all agree that that's probably the biggest problem we want to solve. And so I think this further validates that. My only concern would be that one of the things that like is high on my list of things that I want to do is replace GitLab's homegrown reviewer roulette with our reviewers feature. Like I want to see reviewer roulette burn to the ground and never show up in another danger comment ever again. Right, that to me that is success of the reviewers feature. So I'm concerned. I would be concerned if we thought that that like wasn't as important to do based on this work. And I don't know if you feel like it's less important or if you still think like we should be getting there. But to me, we as a company don't experience that pain. And so like we probably would never rank it high. And I guess I want external validation that maybe that is like another way to sort of externally validate that that's a pain that other people experience. Because we see that in like issues, but I want to make sure that we're not wrong on that one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I completely understand. I think, yes, as Catherine said, I think that there's no harm in doing that and getting that information. It's, I mean, if we reuse the survey and only adds a couple more questions like, what's the size of your organization and what GitLab version are you using, like a self-hosted? So those boilerplate and standard questions, it might be very cheap for us to get it out there. And it's also cheap for us to then analyze the questions because there's not a lot of them. And the main question is that one about the problems, and the other ones are just to add more context. Yeah, so I'd be up for that. I think, but I do think that if we're going to do it, we should do it as soon as possible, because that would allow us to have a better comparison about the data. And even so, it will be interesting because we've been shipping, we ship reviewers, we ship the viewed checkbox and all of that. And I bet that many people answer the survey and have never experienced that. That's the problem with, that's both the strength of having the ability to download and install GitLab on your server, but it's also the problem with getting good data. So yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I would suggest that if you do kind of just duplicate the survey and add in those questions, then just create you can create a recruiting request issue if you want to get more help with getting the survey out there, and our research coordinator can help with that.
Mhm.
In addition to social media or however else you want to distribute it.
Yeah, what is typical for like distributing surveys? I know like I've seen like the GitLab Twitter account and GitLab LinkedIn account like sometimes post them, but I don't know how much we try and avoid that just for survey
Yeah,
efficiency.
in the past it happened more often, but then more and more marketing was kind of like, let's not have so many surveys coming out from our product team. Um, so usually it could either go out to our research panel, first look, which will just be sent from Qualtrics to the Qualtrics mailing list. And if we're having trouble with that, then the coordinator might contact marketing and be like, "Hey, we really need a lot of responses for this. It's having trouble, things like that." But we also might be able to leverage the data warehouse. That's a newer thing that we've been doing, where we pull lists of users from the warehouse and we're just able to fill it from there. And then one other option is the doc site now. So we do have quite a couple paths now where you could like put a banner on the doc site and advertise the survey. So depending on how everything is going, the research coordinator would kind of choose which is the best path to start. So you could just give like a timeline if it's a tight timeline, or if there's like some flexibility with it, the amount of participants you're targeting, and things like that, and she'll be able to go from there. Oh, and also the target persona as well. But
Okay. Sounds like first look is like not hard to like if we want to send a first look, like that's an easy ask. Like no one complains about us doing that.
yes, no one complains about that. And if it's not a huge survey, like Seth's is a big one where we were targeting 200 people, things like that, it
Yeah.
usually should be pretty manageable with first look. And if not, we can either go the path of the data warehouse or the doc survey banner.
Okay. Yeah, I think first look and then like my socials and Kedra's socials, and like we can post that out on our networks, and uh, can probably get the developer evangelists to help out too. They're usually
That's another one. That's a
helpful.
good idea.
So I'd be fine with that if we can figure out how to like what edits we want to make and turn that around. I'm good with trying to get it out just quickly to see sort of what that looks like as a different data set.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I'm up to do that, repurpose that thing. Unless Kai, you want to do that work with the server? I thought not. Yeah, but I wanted to ask anyway because you last time you sounded interested in the platform, the Qualtrics platform. So yeah, I'm just joking.
Yeah, I'll pass. Thanks though.
It's okay. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say that probably we should change the large MR definition question to be multiple choice, given that we had a narrow range of responses. It was mostly about number of lines, number of files. So maybe just looking at the responses that we already have and have a multiple choice question with an or that they can end, then add whatever they want, I think might be better to analyze. Or else, if it's going to be just open text, it would be more difficult to find out what it is.
I'm fine with you adjusting that however makes sense there.
Okay, sounds good. Catherine, on to you.
Yep, I have a quick FYI here that I'm making progress on the MR widget research synthesis. So um, I just wanted to know if any other questions have come up along the way, since I know that you've gotten a lot of work done on the merge button. So if anything else has come up for consideration, just let me know. But just to give you an overview of what I'm doing, In that doc that I linked, I'm basically taking a look through time at, to understand the context of why certain things were introduced into MR widget, when they were introduced, and who is responsible for it. And my goal there is to basically pull out the top, or at least intended job to be done and intended target audience for each of them, so that we can kind of see whether we can create a study that's targeted at, say, developers and, I don't know, whoever else that use this, and maybe give them some tasks to perform and see how they perform, and whether they even interact with the widget or if they do it in some other way, just so we can observe that live. So this is the groundwork for being able to dive deeper into a research study. And what I'm planning to do is to take the information I gather and just create a deck or something that goes through it in chronological order and highlights the intended users and jobs to be done for each section. So that's the current goal. Some interesting things so far. I've seen that Verify owns, or at least introduced. I'm not really sure if they own it, introduced it, collaborated on it, whatever. Verify owns quite a lot of it, a lot of the sections in the widget. And then Create is kind of second place, but then Secure. So in terms of promoting more collaboration between the different stages, that'll be interesting, because a lot of the decisions have been made independently thus far, but it's growing a bit unwieldy in recent times. So that is the main thing that I just wanted to give an update on. Just let me know if any other questions or any other things you want me to look into have come up along the way.
Yeah, I added a comment like inline. I assume that like code review actually owns all the ones that you previously might have said source code owns. Since it's all about consuming when it gets to the merge request, like we sort of delineated that like that means
Okay.
we're the consumer and owner of that and not source code, but
Yeah, that's a good point, because I was like, I don't really know if, for example, the branches part, would that's source code, I think, or is it code review? I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe they're all code review now, but that is one area that was a little tricky. And then there's code owner approvals in the approvers part. I guess that would be code review.
yes, because that's
Okay.
about consuming it. So the
Okay.
way we sort of like the way to think about it, I guess, is like if you're creating rules or creating things that are like that stuff, that's source code sort of technical responsibility. And I think when we consume it, we try and treat ourselves like an API consumer of those things. And so we like the way that appears and the way that users interact with that is how we as a code review group have decided to like consume that feature. So in the widget space, they're probably all, we are the consumer of those things. They're not invested there.
Yep,
That
I
is
agree,
good to know.
100%.
Thank you.
Amy just went through that with docs, so she can tell you how clear as mud that phrasing is for people.
That is just, that's great. And I probably am running into that with some other ones as well, like the differences between what verify testing and verify continuous integration. Some of them just seem to cross lines, and I'm like, I'm not sure where this lands now. So that's why it's interesting to go back into the issues that introduced them and then look at kind of where it is now to compare the two.
Cool. Let's hop to number 3. I put I've watched your recording.
Sorry, Kai, let me
week.
just comment on something about the previous thing, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Catherine, first of all, thank you so much. This is looking great. And thank you for sharing what you're doing, like this work in progress, as rough as it is, like with all of those things. I'm concerned about the scale of the work because this can go so many different ways, and we can be stuck in this forever. I'm well. What I thought now when I was looking at the document was maybe if certain questions arise where a deeper we would need to do a more deep research or usability tests or whatever it is, I'm thinking that we should seriously evaluate passing that responsibility on to the other groups, or else like if we're going to have to do all of the homework of all of the other groups, it's gonna end, we're never gonna know everything about all of the widgets. And I'm sure that we can prioritize those research initiatives because we can communicate as they're blocking more improvements to one of the most important areas of the product. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think there's a definite answer right now because you're still also looking at everything that we have, but I just want you to be, I'm concerned about your work and how much this can take to complete. So keep that in mind as something that we can do.
Yeah, that's a great call out. And it's probably similar to how I'm thinking about navigation and settings. It's like there's going to be the groundwork and to bring it all together, but then once I've surfaced maybe some key pain points or things like that from the research data or survey data, then it's providing recommendations to the responsible group. Like, this is something that we need you to follow up on as part of our initiative to improve this whole page or something like that. So that's a great call out. And thank you for that, because it's very easy to fall into the endless pool of all of this and never return. So I will definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. And also at a certain point, we forget that these things are not just responsibility of one group and one individual. So we can and we should ask for help and ask for others to step up as well.
Yeah, I guess a similar, on that note, the things that you're doing with the merge button, is the idea for that to kind of go to other parts of the widget as well and like make it all consistent, or any thoughts on how that will all interact together?
It will, I think some things we could eventually adapt to the other widgets, but I'm waiting on some indication from your research, as sharp or as blurred as it will be, but some indication. Okay, we've looked at everything that we have, and this is the state of the nation. Okay, let's now make a decision about what we're going to do with the other widgets. The merge one is definitely the one that we can affect and influence today because it's a very narrow scope. So, but yeah, well, let's talk about that.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I was going to say for this last one, and I'll have a hard stop here in a couple minutes. Thanks for the video last week. I watched the recording prior to this meeting, and I'm still trying to read through the very long thread in the issue and go through all the designs and sort of formulate things. So like, I have two thoughts. One, like tactically, like what are the next steps and how should we be thinking about like actioning some of this? And then I have another thought that's sort of like, is this the right path? But I'll let you answer the first one first.
After, yeah, thank you so much for looking at the video. I think the video could be helpful because we go through all of that quickly. And there's a lot to digest. There's a lot of moving parts, and that's why I try to dissect things into must-haves, nice-to-haves, and could-haves. And that's why I wanted priority of feedback about the must-haves. after looking at all of the states, doing all of that mapping, after looking at what our competitors are doing, I think there are a couple of things that stand out as being high confidence. Like this is something that I feel we can change without having to do formal usability testing. I think this is things that we can change. We can put them in the product and get feedback from usage, because we're not going to break workflows. And the current state is not good. So if any improvement that we make here or there, I think it's going to be good. So my plan, based also on the feedback that people have been giving, which validates some of my assumptions and hypotheses, and others the other way around, is to create small issues of things that we can start working on today or in the next milestone. Other things will probably have to be more involved, because we have to involve other groups, or maybe we would need to do a small usability test. But to be honest, I think a lot of that is actionable in one way, in shape or form. And probably it won't be in the first milestone that we will get that new design, but we will do some iterations there for sure. But I understand that, like, for someone that has been parachuted into that, just looking at it, it's hard to digest and hard to know exactly how we can cut it. But I think I'm seeing how we can cut it, but I just have to formalize it.
Okay, I'll leave you with two thoughts and then I'm gonna jump. One is, I'd be concerned if we like slice a bunch of issues up, sort of like the Figma feedback file, and then we just got 50 issues, but it's hard to sort of deal with them and actually get through them. So maybe think on that. And then my last one is, I like the new design. I sort of wonder if it doesn't solve this problem of like the merge button still just gets lost in the middle of like a bunch of stuff above it and a bunch of stuff below it. And that like this new state thing, or this new like way to think about it, doesn't address that. And if our time would be better spent addressing that in a new, like, sort of holistic way versus investing in this. And so I don't have that conversation now because I really do need to jump, but I would say think about it, and we can discuss it again. We can move it to next week too.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.